The story begins in the fading light of a quiet suburban neighborhood, where the air is thick with the uneasy stillness of dusk. The streets, lined with aging oak trees and rows of identical houses, seem almost too ordinary, until a woman bursts into view, her frantic movements shattering the calm. Evelyn Carter, a woman in her late 30s with wild, unkempt hair and wide, terrified eyes, stumbles down the pavement. Her breath comes in ragged gasps as she clutches a small, ornate box against her chest, like a lifeline. She glances repeatedly over her shoulder, her fear palpable, yet there's no visible pursuer, just the lengthening shadows of the evening stretching behind her. The sound of her uneven footsteps echoes as she makes her way toward an old, rusted phone booth, the last remaining one in town, a relic of a bygone era. The glass is grimy, the metal frame corroded, but it stands like a solitary sentinel under a flickering street lamp. She yanks the door open and collapses inside, fumbling with the receiver. Her hands tremble as she punches in a number, her lips moving in a silent prayer. When the line connects, her voice is barely a whisper, raw with terror. "They're coming! It's not what you think, it's not human!" There's a pause, a choked sob, and then she adds, "It takes you when you—" Before she can finish, her breath catches. Her eyes widen in horror as she stares at something, or nothing, just beyond the glass. The street lamp above her flickers violently, plunging the booth into darkness for a heartbeat. When the light returns, Evelyn is gone. The receiver dangles, emitting a hollow dial tone. The only evidence she was ever there is the small box, now lying abandoned on the floor of the phone booth. The camera lingers on the empty space where she stood, the silence now deafening. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, the phone booth door creaks shut on its own. The morning after Evelyn Carter's disappearance, Detective Daniel Graves arrives at the scene under a sky heavy with unshed rain. The phone booth, now cordoned off with police tape, looks even more out of place in the daylight. A relic from another time, its glass smudged with fingerprints and something darker, like the ghost of a hand pressed against it in panic. Daniel, a man in his late 40s with the weariness of someone who has seen too much, but still cares too deeply, steps inside the booth. The air is thick with the metallic tang of old coins and the faint, lingering scent of Evelyn's perfume, something floral, almost nostalgic. His gloved hand picks up the small box she left behind. It's cold to the touch. The intricate carvings on its surface worn smooth in places, as if someone had clutched it desperately for years. When he opens it, the contents are unsettling in their simplicity. A single black and white photograph, faded at the edges. It shows a young Evelyn, no more than 8 or 9, standing in front of a sunlit house. But beside her, where a parent or sibling should be, there's only a shadow. A humanoid shape with no face, no features, just a darkness that seems to bleed into the edges of the frame. The back of the photo is blank, except for a single word, written in a child's uneven script. Remember. Interviews with the neighbors paint a fractured picture of Evelyn's final days. An elderly woman from across the street recalls seeing her board up her own windows in broad daylight, muttering about the watchers. A mail carrier mentions how Evelyn had stopped collecting her letters, letting them pile up like unread omens. And then there's the librarian, Mrs. Duval, who hesitates before admitting that Evelyn had spent weeks poring over old newspapers and microfiche, searching for stories about people who vanished without explanation, people whose disappearances were tied to local legends of something called the breathless shadow. Back at the precinct, Daniel spreads the evidence across his desk, the photograph, the box, his own scribbled notes. His partner, Lisa Chen, leans over his shoulder, her skepticism palpable. You really think this is more than just a missing persons case? She asks, tapping the photo of the shadow. Could be a trick of the light, or a double exposure. But Daniel can't shake the feeling that the shadow in the photo is looking at him, that it's somehow aware of his scrutiny. And when he flips through Evelyn's library records, he finds a chilling pattern. Every book she checked out in the last month was about forgotten tragedies, urban myths, and, most tellingly, cases of spontaneous human combustion. The scene ends with Daniel alone in the evidence room, staring at the photograph under a flickering fluorescent light. For a second, he could swear the shadow's outline shifts, just slightly. And then the light buzzes, once, twice, and goes out. When it comes back on, the photograph is face down on the table. Daniel doesn't remember turning it over. The rain has started by the time Daniel Graves steps inside Evelyn Carter's home. A small, unassuming house at the end of a cul-de-sac, its paint peeling at the edges like old skin. The air inside is thick with the scent of dust and something else, something faintly sour, like dried sweat or fear. The furniture is neat but sparse, as if Evelyn had been slowly stripping her life down to the essentials. Daniel moves through the rooms with a detective's precision, but there's an unease in his steps, a sense that the walls themselves are holding their breath. Drawers yield nothing but unpaid bills and grocery lists, the mundane remnants of a life interrupted. Then, in the bedroom, his flashlight catches a warped floorboard near the bed, one corner slightly raised, as if pried up and hastily replaced. He kneels, the wood groaning under his weight, and pries it up with his pocket knife. Beneath it lies a leather-bound journal, its cover cracked with age. The first page is dated 3 months earlier, the handwriting tight and controlled. But as he flips through, the entries grow erratic. Ink blots, scratched-out words, sentences that trail off mid-thought. Evelyn's voice spills from the pages in frantic fragments. June 14th. The breathing started again last night. Not mine. Something else, just outside the window. I held my breath until I saw spots, and then silence. It's learning. July 3rd. Found another photo in the attic. Me at the lake, age 12. It's standing behind me in the water. How did I never see it before? August 19th. Lisa came by today. I begged her to remember the trip we took to Pigeon Forge in college. She laughed and said we've never left the state. But I have the tickets. I have them. Why doesn't she? The rest is scribbled out, the paper torn. The most chilling entry is the last, written in a shaky hand just 2 days before her disappearance. It's not just watching, it's replacing. Every time someone forgets me, it gets stronger. I hear it in the walls now, whispering my name with my own voice. It wants my breath. It wants my last moment of fear. And when it takes it, I'll be... The sentence ends there. The next page is ripped out. As Daniel stares at the journal, the house settles around him with a groan. A draft slithers through the room, though the windows are shut, and then, soft, so soft he thinks he imagined it, a whisper just behind his ear. Daniel. He whirls around, hand going to his sidearm. The room is empty, but the journal, which he swears he left open on the floor, is now closed. The precinct's archives are a tomb of forgotten cases, dust motes swirling in the yellowed light of flickering fluorescence, the scent of mildew clinging to cardboard boxes stacked like crumbling headstones. Detective Daniel Graves sits hunched over a table, surrounded by files that date back half a century. The journal's revelations have gnawed at him, pushing him beyond standard procedure into something darker, more obsessive. His fingers leave smudges on brittle newspaper clippings as he pieces together a pattern that shouldn't exist. 5 disappearances, scattered across decades, but linked by details that raise the hairs on his neck. 1973. A high school teacher named Arthur Venel vanished from his classroom after students reported hearing wet breathing from the supply closet. His grade book was found open to a page where every name had been scribbled out except his own. 1988. Maria Flores, a night nurse at St. Vincent's Hospital, disappeared after frantic calls to security about a shadow licking the windows of the empty pediatric ward. The only trace left behind was her stethoscope, coated in a substance lab reports couldn't identify, thick and dark as pooled ink. 2001. Twin brothers James and Michael Hargrove were last seen boarding up their farmhouse's mirrors. Search teams found their truck idling in a field, the windshield fogged with breath, except the condensation was on the outside. Each file contains the same eerie artifact, a photograph of the victim with the same faceless shadow lurking just beside them, always slightly out of focus, always closer than it first appears. Daniel's coffee has gone cold when Lisa drops another folder in front of him, a case he hadn't found yet. 1995. Lillian Rhodes, a librarian who specialized in local folklore. Her disappearance report includes a witness statement from a homeless man who swore he saw her step into a shadow and never step back out. The kicker? Her research notes mention a pre-colonial Lenape legend about the Eater of Breath, an entity that consumes not flesh, but memory. That's not coincidence, Daniel mutters, more to himself than Lisa. It's a pattern. And Evelyn was next in line. Lisa shifts uncomfortably. Even if you're right, what's the connection? Random people across 50 years. Not random. Daniel stabs a finger at Lillian's notes. They all knew. They figured it out, just like Evelyn did. And then it took them. As if summoned by the words, the overhead light buzzes violently. In the strobing glare, Daniel glimpses something in the archive's narrow aisle, a humanoid shape, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. But when the light steadies, there's only a coat rack draped in an old raincoat. Lisa hasn't noticed. She's too busy staring at the photo of Lillian Rhodes. That's impossible, she whispers. The shadow in Lillian's photo is no longer beside her. It's behind her, and its hand is on her shoulder. The city outside Daniel's apartment window is a blur of neon and shadow. The hum of late-night traffic, a distant murmur against the oppressive silence of his unraveling sanity. He hasn't slept in days. The walls are papered with photographs, newspaper clippings, and frantic scribbles of red string that connect victims across decades. A spider's web of disappearing breaths. At the center of it all is Evelyn's journal, lying open on his coffee table like a cursed tome. The words seem to shift when he isn't looking straight at them, ink rearranging itself into fresh horrors. He's read her final entry 100 times, but tonight, for the first time, he swears there's a new line. It's in the mirrors when you're not looking. A noise from the bathroom, a wet, rhythmic sound, like lips parting for a gasp that never comes. Daniel's hand trembles as he reaches for his service weapon, the cold weight of it the only real thing left in the room. The bathroom door is ajar. The mirror above the sink reflects nothing but the tiles behind him. Until it doesn't. A shape flickers at the edge of the glass, something that might be his own reflection if not for the way its mouth keeps moving, whispering words that don't match his own ragged breathing. He spins around, gun raised, but the bathroom is empty. When he looks back at the mirror, his reflection is gone entirely. In its place, the shadow from the photograph stares back, its featureless face somehow hungry. He stumbles backward, crashing into the living room where the photographs on the walls now show only empty spaces where people once stood. Vacant park benches, deserted classrooms, a phone booth with its door hanging open. His phone rings. Lisa's name flashes on the screen. "Daniel, you need to come in," she says, her voice strained. "We found Evelyn's car. There's something you need to see." But when he asks what, the line fills with static, and beneath it, the unmistakable sound of breathing. Not Lisa's, not human. The call drops. Daniel looks down at his hands. They're fading at the edges like smoke, and in the darkened television screen across the room, the shadow reaches out. The world comes back to Daniel in fragments. One moment, he's standing in the ruins of the asylum, dust swirling in the beam of his fallen flashlight. The next, he's behind the wheel of his car, parked haphazardly outside the precinct, dawn bleeding pink at the edges of the sky. His hands grip the steering wheel like a lifeline, knuckles white. But there's no dirt under his nails, no scratches from the asylum's collapse. His clothes are clean. His lungs burn as if he's been holding his breath for hours. The case file sits on the passenger seat. He flips it open with trembling fingers, expecting Evelyn's photograph, her notes, the evidence of her existence, but the pages are blank, not ripped out, not redacted. Blank, as if nothing had ever been written there at all. Inside the precinct, the bullpen hums with its usual chaos, but the energy shifts when he enters. Officers glance at him too quickly, then away. His captain calls him into her office, her expression unreadable. "Daniel," she says, steepling her fingers, "we need to talk about Lisa." His blood turns to ice. On her desk, a missing persons report blares Lisa Chen's name in bold letters. The photo attached is recent, her smile bright. But in the background, just over her shoulder, the shadows in the precinct hallway seem darker than they should be. Stretching, leaning. The captain slides an evidence bag across the desk. Inside, a tape recorder. Daniel's voice cracks. "Where did you find this?" "In Lisa's car. It was playing this on a loop." She presses play. Static. Then Lisa's voice, frantic. "Daniel, it's not over. It's never over. It just..." A wet, choking gasp. A sound like something inhaling. Then silence. The recording ends. Daniel stumbles out of the office, the walls of the precinct narrowing around him. He catches his reflection in a window. But for a fraction of a second, his image doesn't move with him. It stays still. Smiles. Then it's gone. And he's just a man staring at his own hollow-eyed exhaustion. On the precinct TV, a news reporter drones about an ongoing investigation into Detective Lisa Chen's disappearance. Behind her, a flicker of distortion rolls across the screen. For a single frame, the shadow stands in the studio, its hand resting on the reporter's shoulder. Then the broadcast cuts to commercial. Daniel walks out of the precinct into the sunlight, but the warmth doesn't reach him. He exhales slowly, watching his breath dissipate in the air. Somewhere, far away, a child's laughter echoes, then cuts off abruptly as if someone has clamped a hand over their mouth. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.